Can everybody mute, please, as well?
All right.
Thank you. Right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Adult Services Scrutiny Performance Panel. I'm going to start off with apologies for absence. Liz, do we have apologies?
We've received apologies from Helen St John. That's the only apology we've received. And Peter Jones has stood down from the panel as of yesterday, so he won't be attending today.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to pass to you now for item 2.
Okay, I'll just do a roll call.
Oh, yeah,
first.
sorry, yeah, do that first. Yeah, sorry, do that
Okay.
first. Sorry. Yeah.
So Peter Black.
Yes, I'm here.
Mandy Evans. No. Joe Hale. No. Chris Holly. Chris Holly.
This is muted.
Yeah. Okay, I can see you here. Paxton.
I am. I'm here.
Yvonne Jardine. Yvonne.
Sorry, was on silent. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. Jeff Jones.
Yeah.
Sue Jones.
Oh, yes.
Erica Kirshner.
Yes, I'm here.
Hazel Morris.
Yeah.
Gloria Tanner.
Yeah.
Tony Beddoe. No. Clive Lloyd.
Yes. Here.
Dave House.
Yep.
Amy Hawkins.
Yes, here.
Okay, thank you. The second item today is appointment of panel convener, because Peter Black is standing down. Can I ask if there's any interest? Anyone wants to express an interest?
Can I nominate Sue Jones?
Can I declare an interest, please?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
My daughter works for the authority.
That's the next item, Chris.
Oh, sorry.
Is anyone interested in expressing interest in standing as chair of the panel? I've got Sue Jones. Is there anyone else?
No.
No? Okay, then I'd like to confirm that Sue Jones is now the chair of the Adult Services panel. Okay,
Well,
Sue, if you'd like to.
I'll second her anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll do my best. It's all right. Well done, Sue. Oh God, I don't know. It was well done. Oh, commiseration. Right. If we go on to the agenda, then prohibition of whipped votes and declaration of party whips, and we go to item number 5, minutes of the previous meeting.
Chair, you've got to ask for disclosure of personal interest first.
Oh, did I thought? Right, sorry. Disclosure of personal interest, and Chris, you just mentioned one.
Has he gone away?
Don't know. Yeah, God.
Yeah.
Any other personal interest, declaration of interest?
No.
No?
No, it's just Chris then.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Prohibition of whips and votes and declarations of party whips. Item number 5, minutes of the previous meeting on page 1 to 3. I take page 1. Page 2. And page 3. Can I have somebody to move that?
I'll move.
And have you got somebody to second it? As a true
I'll
record?
second.
Lovely, thank you. If we go on to item number, and back and forth on the iPad, sorry. Back and forth to public question time, item number 6. Are there any public questions, Liz?
No questions have been submitted.
Okie dokie. So we go on to performance monitoring, item 7. And I think Amy is here, Amy Hawkins. And can I just say welcome to the meeting, Amy?
Thank you. Thanks. I'm not sure if Dave or Councillor Lloyd want to do an introduction to this at all, or shall I go straight into it?
No particular introduction from me, Amy. Usually, Chair, you'd have the two heads of service attending now to, both to share performance and any other items that were agenda. Unfortunately, Helen St John, our head of service for integrated services, is poorly today, so she couldn't join us. So Amy will cover everything, but clearly, both myself and the cabinet member are here to assist if Amy wants us to. I'm sure she won't, but to pick up on any questions as well. But predominantly, Amy will support the panel this afternoon.
Thank you. Over to you, Amy.
Okay, thank you. You've all seen the report. I can share it to screen if you'd like, but just to let you know, it's quite a long report, so I'm not going to go through page by page, but I'm happy to take any questions you have afterwards. So if I just give you an overview rather than share it, if that's all right, and I can bring it up to the screen if there's anything particular. So as Dave mentioned, it would be Helen and I that would be sharing this normally. So I'll just cover first areas that were in my portfolio. So day support and respite, this has been a key area of our work. As you'll be aware, in March, when shutdown initially happened, everything stopped. Over the last few months, we've had a real demand in this area, both from carers and individuals requiring emergency day support and emergency respite. So over the last few months, we have been establishing that, but on an emergency basis only. With our domiciliary care, both our external and internal. So with our internal home care, we've seen increased numbers and increased complexity in terms of the home care. That's an area of Helen's team. The external dom care sits within my service area. And what we're trying to do at the moment with providers is look at the electronic client management information that we have on actual visits to try and identify some capacity to enable us to support more people. So that's the focus of the performance. We've identified 2 new providers as well and signed them up for us to make sure that we have enough capacity to serve the needs in Swansea. There's an update in the report around safeguarding. We've now got a dedicated team in adult services, particularly around safeguarding. Colleagues across adult services have come together as a dedicated team, and we're seeing benefits of that now in terms of how they're thresholding the safeguarding concerns that are coming to us. With our DOLS team, our deprivation of liberty safeguards team, we have got a backlog. As you'll see in the report, over the years, there has been a bit of a curve of the backlog reducing, but it has increased again over the last few months. There's a couple of reasons for this. One was because we pulled the team out of there into the areas of highest demand around Common Access Point, but we're now seeing them back in the team again now. So we're seeing a slight reduction in the new applications there, but still an increased backlog. We're seeing an increase in the adult mental health assessments. I don't know if you want me to take questions actually as you go along. Sorry, Councillor Jones, I don't know. Or if you want to.
It's up to you. Do you find it easier as we go along?
Shall I just whistle stop through some of the main headlines and then I'll take them at the end? Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. So yeah, we're seeing an increase in adult mental health assessments as perhaps you'd expect in terms of the current climate that we're in, and an increase in the court protection work. So some of the focus of Helen's team side of it, we launched the rapid hospital discharge at the beginning of July, and this is building on the hospital to home work, so really supporting reablement and rehabilitation needs of people so we can get them out of hospital quickly. The Common Access Point team are seeing an increase in complexity, whilst not an increase in numbers, as you'll see from the report. You know, the complexity of the individuals that are coming through and the support required is intensifying, but there's a multidisciplinary team approach there. As mentioned already about the home care service, so we're seeing that's our in-house domiciliary care. A focus of the work over the last couple of months to ensure that we can be responsive to COVID. Is that the first time I've said it? Gosh, sorry. I'm surprised I haven't said it every few seconds. But yeah, to be responsive to COVID and ensure that we fulfil our preventative and our statutory functions. We have done a social work restructure over the last couple of months or last few months. So that's the mental health team, learning disability, safeguarding and deprivation and liberty safeguard team, the DOLS team, have all stayed as they are, but the rest of the team have been reorganised to focus around the common access point, the hospital social work team, and then on a function basis. So rather than the hubs, which you might have heard spoken about before, we've now got an initial assessment team and a long-term social work team as well. That's not reflected in the report yet, but over the coming months it will be. So you will see a reflection of that function-based work. And this allows us to be responsive to the current pandemic and also allows an expansion to cover where needed. So we've got the flexibility within the team. And then finally, another piece of work that's linked in with this is a whole system early warning response. So this is working alongside our colleagues from the hospital side of it who've got their triggers and their response around demand. We're looking at a whole system approach. So this is looking at where the impact is around service demand, staffing capacity, bed levels, and that aspect of our work to make sure we can be as responsive as we can at the moment. So probably a bit of a different report than you had in, but I think we're in a very different situation now. So a couple of things in the report Helen and I have written. Oh, and you'll see the format's quite different. So we're trying to report it in a different way. And we'll see changes in this over the coming months based on some of those aspects of our work that I've mentioned that have changed. We are looking at a few areas of focus around our future. Obviously, we are going into another lockdown now, so we need to be responsive of that. But we are working with partners around what a vision of health and wellbeing looks like, particularly working with our partners in the third sector. That's a key piece of work. We are still revisiting the commissioning reviews. Again, probably not in the next fortnight, but beyond then, it still is our aspiration to focus on this in adult services. So you will probably had updates in the past around the new technologies, day support, and also the phase 2 of the residential services, and really learning from what we have in the last 6 months. We definitely going to have a focus around carers. We want to increase carers assessments. You'll see from the report the amount of people that take up the offer is very low, and then those that actually turn into the assessment itself are lower again. So we need to do some work around why that is. And then, as mentioned, we want to get the performance information aligned to our social work new restructure, the rapid hospital discharge, and the whole system early warning response, which I think we'll have to get an acronym for to make it sound a bit shorter because it's already sounding a bit long. So yeah, that's the performance information.
Thank you, Amy. You're freezing a little bit, yeah? I don't know if anybody else is having the same problem. Hello?
No, we're not. No, I'm not having the same problem, Sue.
No, it's clear here.
Right, okay. Clive, you've got your
Okay
hand.
with me.
Yeah, I think Peter had his hand up before me, but I will come in now. I didn't make any comments before.
Yeah, you go first, Clive.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, listen, this is my first meeting as cabinet member, I think, on a performance scrutiny panel basis. I know we have presented a COVID response session previously, but I think what Amy has presented really needs to be taken in an overall context. Obviously, we've gone through very difficult times. Both Amy and Helen and myself, I will say myself, have come in at a very, very difficult period. But I think what Amy has outlined is absolutely the facts in terms of the performance, but it doesn't articulate all the huge amount of work that has gone on behind the scenes in terms of coming out of, well, firstly going into lockdown, managing the lockdown, coming out of lockdown, and then preparing for another lockdown. So from a political perspective, I just want to articulate, what I've been talking to Amy and Helen about in terms of priorities and really out of the first lockdown, reopen services, which has been a really, really difficult thing. So things like day services, for example. Am I back?
Yes. Yes, you're
I'm
back.
back. Yeah.
Yes, you're back.
Apologies for that dodgy connection. Yeah, so things like opening day services has been an absolute priority. So with all the day-to-day stuff that Amy has articulated there, we've had this reopening of services that we've had to manage, and she has had to manage, and her teams. You know, we've been very conscious that lots of people in our care home system haven't had visits from families, friends, all the people that they would need to have those sort of experiences from after 2 or 3 months of lockdown. We've been trying to articulate that and put things in place which would allow us to open that up, and you know, that again, that has been a priority for me, particularly in the areas of dementia, complex care, where you know, seeing relatives, being cut off from relatives and seeing them again has been really, really important as far as I'm concerned. And on the back of that, we've had the protection then about the people that actually work in the industry, in the care industry. So I know I've been working really closely with Dave in terms of making sure that we have the right protection, the right PPE, the right equipment, and the right testing capacity, regular testing capacity for the people that actually work in the care home sector. And as things have progressed over the last few months, and as we're getting to see cases COVID cases increasing, you know, we have that issue about how we discharge people from hospital and get them in, you know, get them re-abled into the right setting with the right amount of care, which has been the discussions that we've been having with the health board. So again, absolutely great what Amy has presented, and that's absolutely right. But I think it has to be taken into the context of all the other things that she's had to deal with in bringing services, bringing the right support and the right environment to both the people that are in the care system, the hospital system, being brought out and back into the community, and the people that work in that at that sector as well. On top of that, I think it'd be amiss for me to say that she's had to deal with all the community stuff, the local area coordinator stuff as well. So many hats for Amy throughout all this, and I think you know, notwithstanding her presentation, it has to be taken into the context of all the other things she's had to deal with as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Clive. I think we do appreciate that. It's a strange time. If I go now to Peter Black, you need to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can I just sort of support what Clive said? It's astonishing that despite all the huge pressures which the staff have been under, that we can report here showing how business as usual has carried on in the background behind that. And so I think that's certainly to the credit of all the staff in social services, both adult and children's services, to be able to do that. I've just got a couple of questions about the report itself, which is a bit, I noticed the new format, but it's also a bit shorter than usual. I'm not sure if we've just been given the summary report or the main, and the main report has not been given, but we normally have both, because we can sometimes dig down into the main report to sort of ask questions on that. But my two questions, first of all, I note that the health board are no longer reporting on delayed transfers of care, which I understand that they're under pressure as well, but it's just a bit disappointing, because I would have thought that this is the time where we need to ensure that people are getting out of hospital beds and into the community. And it would have seemed to me that that's something which does need to be monitored quite closely to make sure that hospital beds are being freed up. So I'm just wondering if we know the reasons, if it's just pressures or if there's other reasons behind that. And then my second question in relation to residential care for older people. We've got figures from the 20th of August to the 18th of September, and that deals with residents with COVID-19 symptoms. We haven't had one of these reports since February. And of course, the big crisis around COVID in residential homes was March, April, May. So it would be useful if we could have that particular aspect of the report going back to the start of lockdown, so we can see how that developed over the time, and maybe the committee might want to look at that as a separate item in a future meeting as well. That's my 2 questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Amy, are you going to answer, or Dave? I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, can I do 2 of the 3 there? So in terms of the report, yeah, you're right, this is the summary version. We haven't actually produced the long version in the last few months because the performance team have done a marvellous job. This is no problem there at all, but we've had additional reporting requirements for the region, for Welsh Government, daily, weekly, but what they are doing is they're preparing it ready to bring to future meetings as well. So that format will probably be the same as last time, and this summary report is the revised format. And then the 3rd point about the residential care and the stats going back to March, that's no problem at all. Yeah, we can certainly provide those. We can provide those sort of after the meeting. We can circulate those. So.
Or maybe it's a future meeting so the committee can dig down into them.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. And I don't know if Dave wants to bring in about the delayed transfer of cares, but I've got a part answer, but you might have a fuller answer.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I'll have a full answer, Amy, but between us, we'll give it a stab. So, Welsh Government relaxed their reporting in the context of COVID around lots of reporting stuff, including DTOC, and that's probably an acknowledgement that DTOC is quite a clumsy measure, but just to give some reassurance, there's a massive focus on our monitoring and reporting of demand and flow through that health and social care system via a variety of routes. DTOC is probably one of the less helpful ways of doing that. Medically fit for discharge is something that the Health Board are very focused on. That's slightly different to DTOC, and again isn't always the most helpful measure, but it's slightly more helpful than DTOC in that it's giving a snapshot at any given time. Do we think the individual patient in that particular hospital bed is in the right part of the health and social care system? It's not necessarily the case that they are medically fit for discharge, which is what that is measuring, and that they don't need to be in a hospital bed, but they might need to be in a rehabilitation hospital bed as opposed to an acute bed, for example. So there is a real focus on that. The region is currently working on some, I suppose what I'd describe as some more progressive measures around demand and flow, and I'm expecting that those regional measures will be replicated in Amy and Helen's revised performance report. You're right to flag, though, Peter, that the hospital is hospitals are under rapidly increasing pressure, as is picked up in the report and otherwise. Community is under an enormous amount of pressure as well. So probably the overall picture is, not surprising that we've gone into a national lockdown to try and take some of the heat out of the system. All of the health and social care system is under real pressure, and if I was to categorise that, comparing it with first time round, it's more problematic second time round. And I'll give I can give you a few examples of that. First time we went into lockdown, the reality was for a lot of individuals, their choice was, notwithstanding, our attempts to reorganise services, etc., their choice was to say, we don't really want people in and out of our house, and therefore we're going to manage with family members, etc., as part of lockdown. And, people were at home instead of being at work, all of those sorts of things. That released significant capacity for us. That's not the case second time round. People have really struggled during that period of first lockdown. Frankly, people's needs have escalated, have got more complicated, as Amy referenced when she talked about the front door. you know, that you can surmise, and I think it's accurate, that you know, with the shutting down of usual hospital services, with the restrictions around care delivery, you know, people have struggled more. The consequences of that period of time not having availability to for those services has meant that their circumstances are more complicated now. That, you know, people aren't handing, and I quite understand it, aren't handing back you know, care packages essentially and saying we'll manage now. What they're saying is we can't manage. We're absolutely dependent on this. Our circumstances are more complicated. So our capacity and ability to flex resources in the way we did first time round doesn't exist in the same way. Hospitals are expected currently to run at least a version of normal service, as well as having a COVID response. First time round, they were pretty much just told, have a COVID response, stop everything else. That's not the case now. So all of those factors, more complexity, you know, more people requiring, yes, innovative responses, COVID secure responses, but the reality is it's more people with more complex needs, and with us across health and social care with restricted ability to respond in the same way we usually would because of having to be COVID secure, pressures of, you know, demand and capacity, throw into that staff absences, which I know you've got on as a substantive item later on the agenda. And that's not just sickness absence, that's, you know, crucial staff in health and social care isolating because they've been picked up by contact tracing. You know, all of those factors make it an incredibly difficult and pressured system for us to be operating at the moment. You know, I'm not saying anything that I suspect is a surprise to you, but it does need to be said. It does reinforce the point that Clive has made. You know, Helen, Amy, their senior management team, our workforce are responding magnificently. They are exhausted as well, and we're back at the beginning of a further spike. So you know, that I am stating facts, and you know, the system's not breaking, but it's creaking, and tougher times to come. That was a bit of a soapbox oratory, but a bit like Clive, felt like, you know, it needs to be said in the context of a discussion about performance.
Thank you, Dave. Amy, do you want to add anything? No. Okay, Jeff Jones, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Dave has actually answered a lot of the stuff I was going to ask about, you know, capacity and how far.
Oh, you've gone silent again.
Sorry. Dave has answered a lot of the questions, a lot of the points I was going to raise with regards to capacity. I was specific, you know, we've entered into contracts with the private sector. How are they actually coping? You know, are they in the same position as us with regards to, shall we say, getting close to breaking point? But I was going to start and actually say that perhaps one of the good things, if I can call it that, has actually come out of this crisis is the raising of the profile for social services on perhaps the low pay, and hopefully, you know, things will improve actually from this. So I was also interested with the point that was actually brought up with the common access point, and I think Dave has sort of answered this. You've actually said the increasing complexity of the inquiries that have actually come into that. You know, why are they so complex now as opposed to before?
Shall I come in on those? So in terms of the private sector, yeah, our commissioning team, both locally and actually across the region, working with partners as well, we're doing a lot of work with our commission services in the independent and the private sector, around ensuring that they have access to PPE, that they're supported with the testing as well, but also around administering the Welsh Government Hardship Fund as well. So we're supporting the financial sustainability of organisations where there are costs incurred due to COVID. So whether that's with inability to take on more care home residents because they're in closure or anything around that. So the team are working very closely with our suppliers. We're also supporting them sort of daily in terms of getting stats and information from them and supporting them wherever there are trends and things that are being highlighted. So I think just to assure you we're keeping on top of it and supporting them where we can. So anything that applies to our own in-house as well, we're applying it to external services as well. The next point you made about raising profile, I mean, yeah, we agree. It's a great sector and everyone's working so hard that it's yeah, it's good. Did you have a third thing as well, sorry, that you asked?
Complexity at the front door.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, complexity. Absolutely, yeah. I think, as Dave said, it is around that people have been coping just about for 6 months. So whether that's with their own individual sort of health and well-being and social care needs, or whether that's with someone they're caring for, and I think it's getting quite complex. I think we're finding we've got examples of people who have been shielding for a long time, who are relatively deconditioned in terms of their own fitness and well-being. So we're seeing some issues around that. I think people who've just about been coping, really hitting a bit of a crisis point now. So that's the complexity we're getting in.
So sorry, Chair. Can I, so, you know, with this further episode of COVID now, with this increase in the number of inquiries and requirements, how are we going to increase our capacity to deal with this for the next episode?
Yeah, that's why we've restructured the service. So we've restructured the service to put the resources where we need them, both in terms of those initial inquiries and the team with the long-term team as well. So we're putting resources in and we've got the ability to flex. So if we need more resources in the hospital social work team, we're able to do that. And same as with the front door as well. We're also recruiting to all the vacancies we've got. So we haven't recruited for a while, but we've recruited to every vacancy we've got at the moment, and we're pleased to say that we're having a lot of interest. So that's great. You know, people want to work for the team, and yeah, just trying to build the capacity in terms of the support. We focused as well on critical functions, so the team are ensuring they're really focusing on what they have to do, the statutory and the requirements that come through the door as well.
Okay,
thank you, Amy. Clive, you've got your hand up. Do you want to add?
Yeah, just a couple of points really. One on the capacity. So you know, sometimes it feels, doesn't it, that we're back to square one as we go into lockdown on Friday, and not a lot has changed from the first lockdown, lessons learned, etc., etc. But one of the things that I didn't mention in my earlier comments was about how Amy, Dave, and Helen have been working really hard behind the scenes to put in place a contingency restructure, so that if we do get into a situation where we see NHS bed capacity overrun and we get into a super surge situation going forward, that we have negotiated with the trade unions, with the teams, a plan that we could trigger that would allow us to respond to a future, as I say, surge or super surge. And that has been an enormous amount of work, a lot of hearts and minds convincing, I think it's fair to say, and a lot of negotiation with the trade unions. So aside from all the stuff I told you about earlier, we've also been making sure that we get plans in place for to deal with any future future high increases in the number of cases, impact on hospitals, the NHS, and the consequential impact on social care, adult social care. So those plans are in place. We can trigger them at the right levels, and we have the buy-in of the unions and the staff now to move to those sort of situations. So really important. Jeff's point about recognising the care workers, Jeff, absolutely not lost on me. And, you know, my mantle is don't forget care out of this, and I'm determined whatever as cabinet member to use whatever avenues I can to make sure that that is a priority. And so all I can say to you at this stage is that I will continue to push for that. I think we need to recognise the people that work in the care sector, particularly those in our commission care sectors, and make sure they're rightly paid, the appropriate terms and conditions, but also that they have the right career paths going forward, so that we attract the best people. Not that we haven't got the best people at the moment, but we attract absolutely the best people into that industry. So all I can say at this stage is watch this space. But you have my absolute assurance as cabinet member that that'll be the forefront of continual discussion, both with the leader through his avenues with Welsh Government, in making sure that we get those quite rightly deserved things in place going forward in the not too distant future, hopefully, as well.
Thank you, Clive. Chris, you have your hand up.
And Chair, I don't have a hand, so after Chris, can I?
Yeah, can I thank you for the report. A couple of questions. First, on page 16, I think it is. Let me check now. Yeah, no, it's 15. Long-term domiciliary care. Changing the method of calculating these numbers and figures. Why did we change it? I know I read the narrative about actual hours worked or hours worked. It doesn't quite marry up, and it, you know, the people leaving and receiving care in August, and we didn't see much in September. So when did the figures change? And what was the reasons for these figures changing? And also, you said about the contingency plan that you had for increases. What is the plan and how will it work?
Okay, who's going to answer that question?
Yeah, I was just trying to get to the figures actually on the report. So the this was to do with the long-term care.
Domiciliary care.
Domiciliary care, yeah. So I mean, what we're doing in terms of the figures with the external first, with the long-term dom care, is looking at we had block contracts, and then we went to spot contracts, and now we've gone back to block contracts, I believe. But we're basically looking at ways to contract with our partners so it's most effective in terms of them having that security, but also us having the availability of the hours and the capacity to meet the demand that we have, both in terms of our brokerage, so the inquiries that are coming in, and those individuals who have stopped and then want to restart their care packages. With the internal dom care, it's linked a lot to just the individuals that we're seeing at the moment. So it's a bit more complexity. We're needing more complex packages of care for potentially a bit longer as well in terms of the support that's being provided. So we're just looking at ensuring people remain safe at home. So that's a lot of the focus. But in terms of the hours not matching, I'm not sure I know exactly which bit you're looking at. Sorry, I can see the page, but I'm not sure the specifics. I'd be happy to follow it up afterwards if there's anything specific or anything you can ask now.
Yeah, what I'm keen about finding out is the numbers seem to be, well, the leavers in July seem to be very high, and we got new starters then in August, and then September there's hardly anything. So I'm assuming we haven't compiled the numbers for September yet.
Yeah,
that's the first thing on that one. But the other thing is, have we changed the eligibility criteria now that we are looking at the hours? Because obviously, if you're looking at the packages and what people are receiving, part of that is down to the eligibility of what people require. So are we changing that to suit the hours, or the hours suiting the individual?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Really good question. So just in terms of September, very quickly, this is the end of August report. We're mid-report cycle, so we're about to have another finance performance meeting, so we'll get another report in the next week or so that'll have the September figures. So yeah, these are only the August figures. I think in terms of what we're doing is looking at the packages of care with the individuals, of what they've actually received. So when someone had got assessed when they were, say, straight out of hospital, it could have said, oh, they need sort of 3 visits a day, but actually, as it turns, 3 visits a day with two people for 2 hours each or something, you know. And basically what we're finding through the client management system or through the electronic client management system of recording, that people aren't actually having that much when it's coming to it. You know, the requirements might have changed. We're looking at it. So this is all very much based on the needs of the individual, not what we're prescribing to them or telling them that they should have. So it's very much based on their need. And then being reassessed.
But come back again and say, are we changing the eligibility for people? So for instance, now, if somebody comes out of hospital who's had a hip replacement, doesn't require any assistance. If we ask someone who's come out of hospital who's had a bowel operation, may need assistance. So are we altering the criteria to what individuals may require for care?
No, is a quick answer. Yeah.
Right,
No.
that's fair enough. That's the answer I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris. I would have been more succinct. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
And about the plans then, if God forbid we get to a situation where the NHS are overrun, you said you had plans and flexibility and to take Clive's words that we built in a contingency plan. What are those contingency plans, and does it have anything to do with us operating within the Nightingale Hospital type of facility, or are we talking about care in the community or residential care, or what are our plans?
There's a response across our service. So all service areas, whether that's dom care, whether that's our residential, is ready to be responsive. So we're ensuring that we've got the capacity where we can. I think one of the key areas will be if we go into super surge, we will move into a 7-day working rota to be able to move people through the system quicker.
Okay, that's really what I wanted to know, how we're going to manage if it is a super surge, which I hope we don't. But if we do, we're looking at many hundreds of people actually being needed to come out of hospital every week, and that could be a huge workload that we would have to operate. But I understand why you're saying that now. Thank you.
Yes, 7-day working, but to reassure you, the plan is that we will move people back off the 7-day working as soon as we can. This isn't about a sort of change of process going forward. This is a responsive to COVID.
I understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I got Paxton Hood-Williams and then Yvonne Jardine. So Paxton.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions really. I've written down here before COVID and then realised that's BC, isn't it? So we'll have to think about that, but that's another story, I guess. Domiciliary care. Before COVID, we were just about running at about capacity. Very little capacity left as far as we were concerned in Swansea in terms of private providers as well as our own providers. Are we in a situation where if we need to get to a situation where we need domiciliary care over and above what we were providing before, are we going to be able to cope? And tied in with that, I guess, is also testing, because when people come out of hospital these days, are we satisfied that they are COVID-free, whether they're going back to their own homes or whether they're going back to residential homes, be those private or local authority? Because I think that's a key point in that sense as to the capacity of the testing system to be able to ensure and satisfy us that that is the situation.
Yeah, should I come in on that? Sorry, Susan. Yeah.
I'm happy to do the testing one, Amy, if you want me to do that one.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, with the dom care, we brought on 2 new providers, as mentioned. So we're reasonably comfortable at the moment, but this is being tracked all the time because the impact, as mentioned, on the workforce. You know, if they then are track and traced or have to isolate, you know, we know this is a situation. So we're trying to increase the workforce as well where we can. So fill in the vacancies, as mentioned.
So where are we finding the extra providers then?
Yeah, it just went to the market. So we went out to the market, and this was just during the last 6 months as well. We've done this. So yeah.
Were they providers who had tendered before for us and that we turned down?
I don't know. I can't give you the quick answer. Sorry, I'm too new to the service to know the history, but we can let you know.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Dave, you want to ask?
Yeah.
I did a testing. I won't pretend that I know the answer to the commission provided question either, Paxton. and I don't have the excuse of being new. But Amy will find out the answer retrospectively. On the testing bit, so you, for people that are being admitted to a care home or an alternative closed setting, whether you're being admitted from the community or the hospital, you have to have had a negative test. For people that are being discharged from hospital into a care package, I will be having domiciliary care. They have to have had a negative test as well. I'm not absolutely certain on this, but I'm pretty certain on this. Just for general members of the public being discharged from hospital, not receiving care, I don't think there is a requirement for a negative test. Often those patients, individuals will have had a test and, will know whether they're, at the point of the test, at least, will know whether they were negative or positive because of hospital arrangements about managing hospital care safely. But it's not a requirement in the hospital to have a negative test to discharge someone. And us, thinking about that intuitively, I suppose, if that requirement was imposed, I think the whole of the hospital system would grind to a halt. So the focus is on, if you're going into a closed setting, a care home, must have a negative test because the worries about infection spread in care homes. And then we've applied the same rationale for people receiving domiciliary care, because even though they're in their own home, so, more limited risk, there's clearly a risk of having staff coming in and out of their home and a risk of transmission via that route. So that's where the focus of the testing is, Paxton.
Is that causing any problems in delayed transfers?
It has an impact on flow around the system, so we have to get the processes right, that people are tested at the right time, through the discharge process. Effectively, what happens often is there'll be a test at a particular point, at a stage of discharge planning, and then a test again immediately before discharge, just to make sure that those individuals are negative. Theoretically you can manage it, but a bit like everything else in this complicated health and social care system, you're right to flag. It will add extra time on the process, whether you call that a delay or whether you would call that, well, that's just safe care planning, safe discharge planning now in the current world. And we're obviously really worried about the absence of testing first time round early on in the pandemic, when that sort of stuff wasn't in place at all. And you'll have heard, and Clive and I have talked to you in our presentation previously about the worries around, well, we as a society, we weren't on top of that, not just here, everywhere. Well, we're really on top of that stuff now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Paxton. Yvonne, you
Thanks,
want a
Chair.
question?
Amy, thanks for the report. I was wondering, you mentioned at the start about mental health, and I was wondering, are we doing anything? Is there anything out there added for people? Because in the last, we talk a lot about mental health, but I work with a group of women and they're saying they can't have lockdown again. Several of them tried to commit suicide during the last lockdown. So, this time I am quite fearful for them, and so are they for themselves. But I was just wondering, is there anything, are we doing anything extra? Is there anything that's open or will be open in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, in terms of immediate responses, I'd say that certainly if people are open to our services, the community mental health teams, they haven't stopped. They're still working. So obviously still continue to work with and contact workers if people are linked with individuals. If they're not engaged with services, in partnership with SCVS, or SCVS as well, have been working very hard on this, and their information is absolutely up to date on the website with all the provision that's available at the moment in terms of open access support in terms of mental health. There's as a part of our regional response work, there's a mental health, I'm not going to remember the exact name for it, but there's a group looking at the strategy for mental health going forward, and we've had some information, and I think a bit like the COVID curve we're seeing in terms of response, we know we're going to have a sort of mental health curve straight afterwards, or it's happening already, you know, in terms of increased demand or actually escalation. So it's an area of work that with colleagues in the health board and the partner organisations that we're looking at. I think at the moment, is there anything additional we're doing in the next fortnight as our services? Not that I'm aware of, other than they haven't stopped. So they're business as usual in terms of, you know, if people want to contact them, they absolutely can through their usual routes. The team are checking in on individuals that we work with. So they've got welfare checks booked in with people, and that's been agreed with the individuals. You know, they've told us what they wanted, but I would advise to link with our partners as well through the third sector.
Okay, thanks very much, especially for SCVS. Thanks for your answer.
Yeah,
thank you. Are there any more questions on this item now? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is, hang on, oh gosh, it's gone off my iPad. The staff sickness in an adult services, the briefing. Amy, it's down to you again, sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm sorry you hear me again. Next time you'll get me and Helen. Okay, so this is a Word document. Again, I won't bring it up on the screen. I'm happy to if people want me to. It's only a few pages. It's just telling you the position with our sickness of adult services.
Can I just say, I've just got to answer my front door. Sorry about this, but can you carry on?
Of course. It's the nature of Teams calls. So the average sickness per full-time equivalent member of staff, we've given you there in the first table. We've compared it to service areas in other areas of the authority. This isn't every single other service area because we can't do like for like if there's been reorganisation or change. I think what it shows is that last financial year, everybody, it was around half and half. People had increased or decreased sickness. In the last 6 months, there has been a trend across other service areas for improved sickness. Unfortunately, in adult services, there has been an increase in sickness. It's approximately 25% increase in sickness pro rata. I don't think that's, or it's not unexpected, although I want you to be reassured that we are working on it. But I think it's well documented and predicted at this time. We've also got the information in terms of our sickness going back the last 5 years. So you've got that position. So you've got the 5-year position and the last 6-month position. Point 3 is around the top sickness absence. So I've given you the sickness absence for the last 6 months and then the last 5 years as well. So stress has always been the highest reason of sickness for 5 years in the service. I think it's worth pointing out that in the last 6 months, we've seen this increase to 41% of our sickness is related to stress. And it was around about sort of 22% over the last 5 years. So this is a really significant increase. There are a few areas of sick not recorded. I think that in the last 6 months, I think that's a reflection on how fast paced everything is. And, you know, we will catch up on that. I think some of the other areas are just nothing unexpected in the other areas. I think the split between long-term and short-term, this is common with other areas across the authority as well, that the majority of our sickness is long-term, around about 75% for last financial year. So because in February when this report came, the figures weren't, I think it was February or early March, the figures weren't available for obviously the year that had just finished then. So the figures you've got there for 1920, we've got 74% long-term sick, 25% short-term. But we have seen a change in this in the last 6 months. So there's 85% long-term, 14% short-term. we haven't done any really digging deep in terms of the analysis of this, but we anticipate that working from home has contributed to that, the reduction in short-term sickness. You know, we think perhaps if people had sort of coughs and colds and other things, they've carried on working because they could work remotely. The sickness days, there has been a sort of increased pro rata, as I mentioned, in the last 6 months as well. I haven't put any analysis in the report, or Helen and I haven't, in terms of what we're going to do, but I thought you might want to know what we are going to do. But I don't know if you want to take some questions, if you want to ask any questions first.
Thank you. I got Peter Black first and then Paxton Hood-Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just looking at the figures on table 2, where you've got the trend of the average number of days sickness per FTE comparison by service unit. I'm interested to see that so far the first 6 months of this year is significantly down. I'm just wondering, are you anticipating, is the second 6 months normally a much higher sickness rate and that accounts for it, or is that because you've got a fall off in short-term sickness because of people working from home and just working through colds and stuff like that? And that's the first question. I'll come back with the second one if you want to deal with that, Amy, first. Yeah, so in terms of the last 6 months, we've seen an increased pro rata of 25%. So it was 18.9 for the year and it's 11.8 already. So it's increased.
I think if I could come in on that for a second.
Yeah, sorry.
I think the reason for that is that the denominator you're using for the 6 months is basically the same as for the 12 months. So that figure should probably be twice, and that's 23.6. And if you compare that 23.6 with the previous 90%, and that gives you then the 24% that you were talking about, I think.
Yes, that's so those, okay. So that is only
those figures down the right-hand side are really they're giving a false indication of what is the current situation, because it's looking at 6 months, the amount of sickness in 6 months divided by the full-time equivalent for the 12 months. And that's why the percentage is only half of what it should be.
Yeah, it's
that's
not
the way I've worked it out.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, absolutely. It's not a percentage, I suppose, it's the amount of days. So they're the amount of days that people are off.
Okay, I bow to the statisticians. I bow to the statisticians on this.
I'm looking at Child and Family Services at 5.61. That's 11.2 compared with 12.6 for the previous year. So it's slightly down there. So I think those are the figures, and that's what you need to do when you're looking at those figures to get a true comparison with previous years.
Okay, my second question then relates to the table 3. I note that the massive increase in stress, and I think that's obvious, given the circumstances, that's not really surprising. You've mentioned the reason not recorded nearly 12%. I'm just wondering, is there a failure of systems there, or is it just that people are just not turning up, that we're not able to record that the reason for them being off?
We haven't done a full drill down analysis, but I think what's quite interesting is there's been 0 personal reasons recorded for sickness in the last 6 months, whereas traditionally we've had, sort of 5, 6, 7% around personal reasons. And I just wonder if there's something around that, but it could be around administration as well. Just people having the time to record it. They're recording the sickness, but not following it up with the reasons to add onto the online system. We will find out more. This is the first time we've run the report in this way, and it's certainly since Helen and I have been in post. So we're going to be doing some more work around this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any more questions on the staff sickness?
I think Amy was going to tell us what she's going to do about it.
Yeah, is that okay? Just to tell you. So just really briefly, we've got a
because the sound on mine is coming and going.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Yeah, we've got a 3-pronged approach. Basically, we've got the HR approach, which is ensuring that we're following up on all the sickness management side of it. It was stalled corporately, across the board until September in terms of following up sort of actions related to long-term sick, but we're now doing that. So ensuring that we're monitoring compliance and all the processes that needed to be followed for long-term sickness. The second approach is around occupational health. we've got one of the highest levels across the council, if not the highest level. You know, I can't compare every single service, but we're going to be working with our colleagues in occupational health, stress management and counselling, and where resources allow, I've asked them if we can do, or Helen and I have asked them if we can do a pilot approach, particularly for adult services, around direct support for individuals. They have been providing psychological first aid for our teams, and this has been taken up by hundreds of the staff. So this is support just while they're doing frontline services, because obviously the stress levels are incredibly high. But we're also we're going to be looking at some bespoke pathways of support and different approaches, really seeing how we can bring those figures down. Our target is to get to that corporate average, or that corporate target of 10 absence days, rather than exceeding it in the first 6 months of the year. And then the third and most important approach is we're going to work with the teams. So we're working with the teams to co-produce a wellbeing plan and strategy and actions for the service. We've done a staff survey in terms of how people are coping remotely, how people are finding the stress levels, and solutions as well that people, and we're hoping to come up with a plan we will have a plan that's designed by the team. Actions in place already are around welfare meetings, one-to-ones, you know, open door approaches with management. But I think the solutions are going to lie with the team to tell us, and it could be creative as well. It could be something quite bold and different, but hopefully we'll have that sort of corporate approach to implement this, because I think we need to find some innovative solutions, really, because it's we've said it all the way through, but we're working in such unprecedented times, and I think the impact on, you know, our most important resource, our teams, is significant. So we need to look to them for some of what they'd like us to do to support them.
Thank you, Amy. Clive, you wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, no, I listened. I know through discussions with Amy and Helen how important, how serious, you know, we take the well-being of the people that work in the sector, and this particular and the directorate, and you know, of all the directorates, this is the people-based, isn't it? This is one-to-ones with individuals, the people that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I suppose in many respects, it's not surprising that the levels of stress have increased significantly. Coupled with that, with some of the other, if you want to look just purely on statistics, you couple it with some of the other directorates which have actually benefited from home working, which have seen their the levels of sick absence reduced, because they're able to work from home, and the sorts of things that Amy talked about in terms of, you know, the colds and the sniffles and whatever, whether they would have taken sick before, they're carrying on working, and you know, it's a lot more conducive in an area like corporate property services, for example, than it is in adult social care. So I think that needs to be taken into context, along with the practicalities of having those conversations with the individuals that are on sick leave as well. Zoom and Teams and all these social interfaces, you know, they're not great, are they, for managing individuals' personal issues around sick leave. So all those coupled together, and you know, with the times that we're in at the moment, I don't think it's not surprising. But what's positive is that you know, Amy and Helen, you know, they're putting plans in place to see how we can increase that sort of one-to-one capacity that can assist people in that have got issues and get them back to work. But it is really difficult, and you know, again, you know, it should be taken into context that of all the directorates, adult social care is the one that is hugely people-based, relies on conversations with individuals, and in this COVID world of not having all those tools available, it's really difficult. But I'm sure we will get to a situation where we can improve the situation.
Thank you, Clive. Paxton, you've got your hand up.
Just quickly, if I may, Madam Chairman, obviously, as far as this is concerned, in terms of any sickness, I suppose prevention is better than cure. It has to be. I don't know, and perhaps David might know, you might know something, Amy, whether there's anything in the system basically, or in the health system, in the social services system, where people are looking at putting mechanisms in place to try and reduce the amount of stress that people are under, or where they can reduce the impact of the stress that they're under to hopefully make life better for them, and also reduce the next amount of time they have to lose by not being in work.
I'll have first stab, but I'm sure Amy will have a view as well. And I think Amy's touched on some of it. Some of the sort of emergency psychological workshop stuff that was already in place with teams was an intentional part of what we were trying, you know, response to that sort of thing, Paxton, as could we do something proactive given we knew what people were going to be facing. So, you know, one of the places we prioritised that was in care homes, for example. You know, this was even before we had the mass number of deaths. We knew it was coming, so we tried to, shocking as that is, you know, we knew it was going to happen. We, you know, to started working with staff around almost like a proactive trauma counselling type thing, just to try and build some resilience, and then people clear about where they could go for help if they were starting to be impacted by what was absolutely terrible set of circumstances. I think what Amy and Helen are describing is, well, we've done what we could today in the circumstances that we found ourselves. We now want to build on that well-being strategy, you know, to try and be even more proactive around some of this stuff. I suppose removing the inherent stressful nature of the work is really difficult, because it is inherently stressful, and it is triply, quadruply so at the moment in the context of the health pandemic. Yeah, you know, as Clive has said, you know, the kind of the flexible working opportunities don't really exist if you're a frontline domiciliary care worker. You know, got to be out there, you know, smile on your face, dealing with circumstances that are really challenging. Where we can do that sort of stuff, we will. I think part of it's probably back to some of what Clive and Jeff referenced earlier. It's ridiculous. You know, these are some of society's lowest paid staff doing one of the most, you know, we've all learned, if we didn't realise beforehand, one of the most crucial, demanding, taxing, you know, jobs you could possibly do. And the way we appear to value that is to pay peanuts, really. You know, not in the council, we're not too bad in terms of what we pay, but it's not at the top of the scale of what we pay even in the council. If you go outside of the council, you know, it's very, you know, it's very different. And that's tricky, isn't it? If you're facing all of that stress and all of that anxiety and juggling your home life and you're paid a pittance, you know, you would think that adds to it. You know, so but in the end, I think there is something about, you know, genuinely, so there's been nice words up until now. I don't mean from Clive, I don't mean from Jeff, I don't mean from the council. I mean, nationally, it's been nice words about we want to do something about this. We're gonna clap this workforce once a week, etc. Until that turns into genuine esteem for this workforce, I think we'll always be battling with, we're asking a hell of a lot of people. The other bit, I don't know whether it comes out in the particular analysis that Amy's done, and Amy and Ellie have done, but I've always been quite struck by, when you do deep dive into the stress, it's not just the work stress, it's the juggling work stress and home stress. And again, if you link it to your ability, if you're one of those workers, to maintain a sensible work-life balance, when, you know, we need you to be working late into the night to support people, that's when they've got, you know, critical care needs that we'd have to support. We need you to be working early in the morning you know, just throwing that into the mix around juggling stuff and then not expecting it to, you know, to impact on stress. So I don't think there's an easier answer to Paxton, which is why I'm particularly rambling. I think it's all of those things, though. If we get serious about it, if we really delivered the vision that I think Clive's, you know, committed to describing, some of opportunities to address some of this proactively would emerge from that. Short of having that whole approach to, you know, we really want to tackle this stuff seriously, I think the strategy that Amy and Helen are setting forward is the right one. Do what we can to be responsive, to be proactive, to be flexible, to be supportive. I suspect that won't be enough without some more systemic, you know, proper structural change to how we do some of this business. And we won't be able to do that just on their own as a council. Too many things are connected to that. I'll shut up there.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any more questions?
Can I just say, Chairman, basically I wasn't meaning to be in any way critical. I just think that when you work in that system, you can't always see what the answers are because you're too close to it. I'm just wondering whether there's anything in the literature outside that you might have one or two people who could just for a few days or for a week or so just be looking at to see if there's anything that you can put in place just to help people a little bit, that's all.
Thank you, Paxton. The staff
Good.
best asset, aren't they? Okay, if there are no more questions on that particular item, we go on to the Adult Services Work Programme for 2020-21. Okay. Liz? Looks as if we've lost Liz.
Off, Liz. Your mic's off.
Sorry. We've got the draft work programme for the remainder of this year. It's just to check really that everyone's happy with the items that are on there, or if anything else anyone feels needs to be added. If you could sort of say now, and before we sort of agree it for the rest of the year. I mean, obviously it's an ongoing thing, so if anything needs to be added as we go forward, then we can still do that.
Can I just ask if we can look at isolation for the elderly care people as one? And I've got Chris's hand up and Peter.
Okay.
Chris?
Right, thanks, Chair. Amy, I wonder if at some stage we could have a report back from our residential homes about how they've been affected by COVID-19, specifically on what we've done and what sort of precautions, if we like, or what lessons we've learned from it, so that we can then share with members who could possibly pass it on to the private sector as well. But it'd be interesting to hear how we have done on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Peter?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. I referred earlier to the figures which we had from the report going back to February. So that would be useful to be part of that report, having those figures, and maybe earlier rather than later as well.
Lovely, thank you. Dave, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I need a plea to the committee, really. Nothing that you're describing is unreasonable in terms of requests. Nothing on your programme is unreasonable in terms of sensible areas to be looking at. I just want to acknowledge explicitly we are going back into lockdown. We're going to have a really difficult winter. There may be times when the heads of service are saying we're not able to respond, we're not able to do stuff. So just to ask the committee to be sympathetic to people are working incredibly hard. That doesn't mean that we would use that as an excuse not to, support really robust scrutiny. We absolutely rely on it. But just acknowledging something, stating the obvious, really. But I'll say it up front.
Thank you, Dave. Chris, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think, Dave, every one of us realises what the whole of the department in adult care and every other service you provide, and we are in a very, very difficult and stressful pandemic, and we understand that if something takes a little bit longer than it should do, or it's not totally complete, then so it be. You know, the lessons from this are going to be learned for a number of years. So, you know, if it takes a bit longer, the sooner have it taking a bit longer and you're looking after some person in a home than doing this, and then we'll get to it sooner or later.
Thank you, Chris. I would also like to know something about domestic violence and the increase over this last pandemic, if that's okay with you all, to add that into our work plan. Is there anybody else needs to say anything? Okay. I just thank you all, and thanks Amy, Dave and Clive for attending today. It's much appreciated. Thank you all. Take care.
Well done.
Bye. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Liz, are you going to stay on a minute for me to have a chat with you?
Yeah. Tell them all.
Thank you, Chair. Ta-da.
So long. So long.
Did really well, Sue. Well done.
The sound was going and coming. So
I know it's difficult when you're doing it from home. You always have that problem, don't you? But you did well. You did great. Okay, I'll speak to you again. Take care.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.